Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hi, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Thursday, Friday. Yes. Wednesday. Pre-record.
Time travel.
Yeah, that's it. Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up. We are, in all transparency, recording this, or have recorded this episode. So we're not live, but feel free to drop in your comments below, and we will be picking them up later and obviously carrying on the conversation. But welcome to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, innovation. This week, we're going to, as the countdown to London market claims seems to get faster and faster, in my world anyway, we'll just take a quick look at the results of the pre-event survey. We'll also have a look at some stuff around drinking culture, some bit of research there. But as always, let's start with some news about car insurance. So yeah, complaints for, I guess this is to do with claims, Ben, to keep on the theme of claims.
It's both claims and premiums. So there are now, quite a substantial increase to 3,000, basically 900 from 2,500. So well over 1,000 increases. So that's the ombudsman. So they're kind of the more serious end, I guess, of complaints. Yeah. They've gone through the insurers themselves. So I really just pick this up because I wonder whether this is symptomatic of what we're going to see more of, which is essentially more kind of quite negative press really around the insurance industry, which is what we don't want to see. So it's kind of inevitable, I suppose, people will say, because of the fact that car insurance has gone up a lot. But it is also saying that claims are not being paid quickly. And interestingly, there was an Insure TV interview with the one of the head of claims at Aviva, was saying that she was kind of very open actually, and said that they'd had quite a lot of problems with motor because they've been struggling to staff it up and all sorts. So they were she was very honest about it. So there are genuine problems in the motor market, but I just wonder if we're going to get more spillover of this generally, because everybody's got a car virtually. So, it layers over the insurance industry is not there for us and all that sort of thing in a difficult time.
I think there are some genuine problems in terms of recruiting, in the supply chain, in inflation that we've talked about before. I also think you got to put it in the context that there's an election coming up, and this is so easy for politicians to pick up on. Yeah. And it's almost like a stick they can beat people with without any kind of comeback.
Well, I think one of the things that the industry really does have to look at is how it communicates, and we touched on it last week, how it communicates, what it has to do, what is necessary. There is no question they have to increase motor rates at the moment. That is just, there are factors there that they have to respond to, otherwise they will lose money, and they are losing money. But they have to take the time to think about that message going in well before this happens. So I think you've got to somehow communicate, get people on board with it, confer responsibility, share responsibility, get education, I think, as you said last week. I think there's a major job that the insurance industry could do. I feel that sometimes the typical response of the insurers to say, or insurance people, is to say, well, they don't understand it, so what? That's their problem. But any industry that has a problem, whether that be the tech industry with content and so on, you've got to actually face it head on and address those concerns, understand why people are not always getting the positive side of the industry, and manage expectations. And I have to say, I think the interview that the woman, I've forgotten her name, I'm afraid, maybe we'll put it up on the LinkedIn, did around this was a very honest and good interview, actually, around, yes, we've had some issues, but we're trying to solve them. I think we need more of that, because often the industry looks defensive, and that is both, the insurers themselves, sometimes the individuals on various forums, and I think you have to work harder at it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's it's a good observation. I think having kind of a preemptive rather than a reactive response to this stuff would be a good starting point, because you're right. It's just it's about communication and transparency, isn't it? And I think if in that interview, I haven't seen it, but from what you're saying, putting a transparent and kind of open, as you say, spin on what's going on, and say, well, look, we've got some real challenges like every industry has, but we're trying to fix them. I think goes down a lot better than, oh, well, you just have to put up with it because you've got a car, you'll have to insure it. So yeah,
I think often the communication goes along the lines of, which I've said before, oh yeah, maybe there is a problem, but that's because nobody's paying enough for insurance. Well, that's a really lazy response, because insurers are in charge of pricing as much as they're in charge of service.
Yeah,
and it's our product. It's the insurer's product. It's not the responsibility. You have to deal with the reaction of people to that product. And I think it's also the issue of certain a silo effect, if you like, in the market, where there are often quite big parts of the market where, like motor, if that's not been managed, where everybody gets tainted with the same brush. And so those maybe are the areas where you focus the communications to begin with. I'm sure that a problem in contingency insurance is not going to really change the reputation of the industry.
Yeah.
Albeit it might be a problem for those who are trying to get the contingency insurance, but so it's these bigger classes, I think, of business, and there are problems now. For example, obviously, as we know, with cladding and broker commissions and things, and the government's got a spotlight on that. So there is a real spotlight on all of this at the moment, and that's we'll come on to more about that in a minute.
Yeah, indeed. And with that, let's move on. So this one, I think you've also seen in the Insider, looking at kind of the aviation issue, and we've touched on this quite a few times over the last few months since the war broke out. But yeah, interesting article here about kind of the settlements. Are they coming through? What's the
no, it's not really settlements. What is, as far as I can tell, what's been agreed between Aeroflot and Russian Airline and AirCap, the biggest leasing company,
right,
is that they will do some sort of deal on a sale of aircraft or whatever. And what this does is effectively it does two things. It sets a framework for reduction and for some kind of recompense for these aircraft that are stuck. And that's good, because that allows all of the participants, including the insurers and the reinsurers, to start to see a way forward. And it actually also reduces, it kind of immediately takes some of the cost out of this. So there's a quote in here where it's gone from 3.5 to 2.75 billion, which doesn't sound a lot, but it is 500 million-ish. And what the article says is that what that does is it takes a lot of pressure off negotiations and the tendency to go to law, which is also expensive, and more likelihood of people coming around the table to discuss. So there's a multiple effect of some movement in this. Now, there's a long way to go. Getting reinsurers and around the table, cedents and so on is very hard, it says, and it doesn't surprise me, but it's a start. And I don't know, it could, generally speaking, it could be just a generally good sign that even at the level of the war, the whole thing hasn't broken down. It's comforting that there are sort of proper negotiations that can happen. It gives you a bit of sense of hope, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, the first step on perhaps the stairway to some kind of agreement, I suppose, rather than the settlement as a whole. I think I agree with you. I think it does show that the industry can come together, or the parties involved can come together and come trying to move things forward. Because a few months ago it looked like it was really at loggerheads, and couldn't really see a way out of it. But the fact that they're negotiating,
I don't think this is going to mean that Putin and Zelensky will suddenly step down and say that's great. We've got a minor movement on the airline issue. But what I do feel is that small things can make a big difference because they're signifiers of something. So that's my optimistic view of the world, and I'm sure that's not shared in the Kremlin.
No. Well, it might be.
Oh, they might be listening.
They might be listening. If you are, just can you all stop it?
If a VP's on the LinkedIn, we'll know who it is.
Yeah, that's it. I think I want to say Mark Watson was on the news quiz on Friday night on Radio 4, and he was being very funny about just basically he can't believe the war hasn't stopped because of all the satirical comments that have been on the news quiz since the war started. He can't believe that it hasn't influenced the outcome.
It must have done. Yes, of course.
Yeah. But anyway, we're doing our little bit, aren't we?
I think we are in the insurance industry, as in we are helping it along. Yeah,
helping it along. And let's move along. So let's talk. So just before we talk about claims, let's just talk about this one. It's quite interesting as well because it's still on the theme of the war, but slightly different because basically saying that some elements are not being priced in yet, which is quite surprising. I would have thought, since that the war's been going on for a while, and you would have thought that people have got a good handle on what the kind of risks are at a strategic level. But this article seems to disagree with that.
This is going the other way, of course. With one hand we give and the other we take in this show. So this article is really around the pricing of risk, particularly in the maritime industry, marine. Last week was shipping week in London, so I guess this was one of the reasons for having this type of article. But it's the Lex column in the FT, and what they're saying a number of things really. One is that how war premiums work. So they work that there's this joint war committee list from Lloyd's, which shows it defines regions which are basically at war, and therefore war cover becomes necessary. So you only need war cover when you're on this list, the joint war JWC list. And once that list, once that war cover is required, then the cost goes up, and it goes up differentially depending on, I suppose, the estimated risk. So at the moment, they're saying entry into the Black Sea zone would add a further 100 to 150 basis points on top of what might be a 10 basis point premium on the ship's value. So that's quite a substantial rise. If you go into the Gulf, which is also volatile, it's 10 to 25 basis points. So it varies around the world. And so what they're saying is that maritime tension, that war resulting from war, is causing these rate rises, and they haven't all been priced in yet. And on top of that, we've got supply chains still recovering or not recovering, and we've got significant port congestion, which has pushed up rates for hull and cargo. So what all of that is doing is causing complexity. And then on top of that, even, you've got other new types of risks that are coming in. So fire risks, which I think we said a few weeks ago was the biggest cost of claims in the world, fire claims are going up too, because these ships are carrying more and more of these lithium batteries for EV cars.
Not to the UK anymore.
No, not now that Rishi stopped it. So that could be a thing that he could claim that he has done is reduced premium rates, albeit he's increased the climate risk and the nearing of the end of the world.
Yeah, well done. It's a political show this week, isn't it?
Very political.
Very political.
So Dan McCarthy, head of marine at Markel, great name. Sounds like a film star's name, isn't it? Dan McCarthy. No, newsreader. Dan McCarthy, war correspondent. Head of marine at Markel International says it's caused a sustained increase in rates unlike anything seen for a generation. So, insurers always say that sort of thing because they've got to talk it up in a way. But to be fair, it's objective. And the final thing is the worry about the sea around China and Taiwan and things, which currently is not a JWC on the JWC list. But if that started to come into play and the retentions rose, or it became such that Lloyd's felt it should go on the list, then again, premiums would go up. So, yeah, we're seeing, big market, big part of the insurance market, marine, as we know, could be really, really big rate hikes in all sorts of parts of the world.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. It's these global dynamics. It's funny how they work their way into our industry, and when you start to put it in those in that landscape, it's just very hard to predict. What's going to happen.
Yeah.
What is going to happen with China and Taiwan, and it's just so difficult. And
I think it's all linked as well. That's the other thing that the insurance industry and Lloyd's can talk about and see is that it's all linked. So Taiwan is the biggest chip producer, I think, in the world. So if that becomes a problem, then you have a supply chain issue again, which is problematic. So it's one step forward, two steps back, all of this stuff at the moment, it feels like.
Yeah. Right. Keep an eye on the ships coming in and going out again. Let us, before we talk about drinking culture, let me just share this. So these are the results. Well, no, the executive summary of the results of the pre-event survey. So ahead of London Market Claims, we ask the audience what they would like to get out of the conference as a whole and what they would like to get out of individual sessions. And these are the top 5 challenges or themes that the delegates who are the attendees would like to see covered. The top one is around the blueprint 2. And we were talking about this beforehand, and I think there's 2 things to say about that. That's not unsurprising, I would say, because the deadlines have now been set for the end of June, beginning of July next year, which is pretty close. And I think it's just concentrated people's minds in terms of what they have to do and where they're going to get the information from and what they're actually going to put in. And I think it's concentrated minds on both sides of the fence, from Lloyd's and the joint venture, but also from attendees, claims directors and operations directors at this event. And I still think there's quite a bit of confusion about, firstly, how it's going to work, what it's going to look like, what they need to do to get ready. So hopefully at the conference, we can cover off some of this stuff, get some insight and see if we can move things forward a bit. But, it does pose a question about whether that deadline of next July is realistic and achievable.
Yeah,
and
I think there's always going to be angst around anything like this, but Lloyd's, as I perceive it, has invested a lot in the communication about this. And if this is still the response, then it isn't working as well as it should. And I am, not pointing fingers, but you do have to say that when you do these sort of things, you have to get them right. I mean, communications is something you have to get right, and you have to then, if it's not working, you have to do more of it or make it better. And I think if this is, we're a long way into this now, aren't we? Yeah. 10 years or so, it feels like. to me. Whole lifetime.
It's like the upgrade of the old street roundabout. It's we're 10 years into a 50-year project.
It's like a dream where you keep waking up and thinking it's being done, but it hasn't been done.
But to put the counter, I would say to counter that slightly is that I think most of the activity has been on the placement side, and it's only just come into the claim side. Yeah. Now we can argue and we can debate about whether that is right or wrong, or whether it was the right decision or whatever else. But it's kind of understandable if you look at it through that lens. But I take your point around.
But I don't think I don't think claims has been treated well in this or prioritised as much as it should be. And I know a lot of claims people will agree with that. It all the way through this process, claims has been pushed to the back of it. And if someone wants to come in and argue that with me, I can happily do so, because I think that's how the claims people feel that I speak to. And it does seem to me that they've still got a very old system. And guess what? Most of the data we're seeing now and the people I'm talking to and the regulation is pushing towards the promise and outcomes that we talked about in Consumer Duty. Claims is such a huge part of that. We need to have claims right up front, and claims arguably should have been the priority. Not placing necessarily. Should be claims.
Yeah, it's a hot topic, that's for sure.
It is.
Lots of responses in here. So let's just move down these quickly. So technology and automation, as you can imagine, second there on the list, and linked with that is data and analytics, because underpinning all your technology and automation is good quality data. And I think just how you deal with that internally is a big challenge for those claims people, for all the reasons that we know about. I think the interesting one is client experience, which for a few years, didn't even feature. It was all about efficiency, and it was all about, how do we move things through a bit quicker? And, there was never really like, where's the, quite often at the conference, it was like, well, where's the customer or the client in these conversations? So it's good to see that that's on the list and people are thinking about it.
I agree with you. And I think that some of the research that we've had back shows that actually if you talk to underwriters, for example, they really want analytics and data and specialist information, which you can get from claims data, because that helps them sell. And they also want, interestingly, promotion of the claims brand, as it were, or the claims proposition. Whereas actually, funnily enough, when you talk to claims people, they say, we just need stuff done quickly and delivered. So I think there needs to be some work around that. It's a horrid word, holistic, isn't it? But that point of get rid of claims and start talking about what your outcomes are and how that's going to work. The more I say it, the more I convince myself I'm right.
Good. I'm glad you're on board.
Because nobody else listens to me.
Oh, there we are.
I listen to myself.
Good. And then the final one is adaptiveness, market adaptive. So yeah, it's really about, I guess, concerns about kind of the broader readiness of London to adapt to the challenges of the future that we quite often talk about on this show. So quite interesting themes there. A load of stuff that we'll be tackling in a couple of weeks' time. So looking forward to that. And we're going to major on service, aren't we? During our
we definitely are. Yes. Was this summary here done by your friend?
Yeah, Chat.
Yeah,
Chat. GTP. Chat G.
Chat G.
Yeah, you can tell because of the way that it's it structures it. It's just default, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's fine. It's okay. It's good for this.
Yeah, it's all right. Obviously won't publish it or put it on a LinkedIn show.
Of course
That'd
you
be
would.
mad, wouldn't it?
That'd be ridiculous.
Yeah, utterly crazy. Anyway, moving on. Drinking culture. Let's talk about drinking and culture and this article. You found this. So this is a real study by Nottingham University, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is this financial services or just
insurance? So this is a new study from the University of Nottingham, and it has a bit of the article's written as it probably would be, slightly on the sort of sensationalist side, picking up on the drinking aspects and the drinking culture. I hope you like the juxtaposition of the women insurance ad that I brought up there, because it also does talk about misogyny and diversity and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So why pick this out? Well, one, because it's a new study, and it does seem to be, it is claiming to be a proper academic piece of work, and it isn't the Lloyd's study. It is a piece of work done by academics. Now, that doesn't necessarily make it any better than other studies, but it has got some apparent rigor to it, and it has some interesting findings, things we've heard before, that something like 37% of participants had heard or seen discriminatory language. Now, these are, sometimes you take these surveys with a pinch of salt, because you get like 90% said they'd been discriminated against in their jobs of a survey which was self-selecting and all that sort of thing. But I assume they've been through a more rigorous approach here. But I think it's a better finding almost for say 4 in 10 to be saying, we heard stuff and we didn't, that wasn't very good. And I think that sounds an odd thing to say. It feels a more realistic finding. It feels like it's a better study in that sense, that you can kind of trust it. And you need to look at lots of studies all the time. So the other one that is definitely, again, feels kind of right and thoughtful, and as a conclusion, is the way that women say they've been treated. So a lot of the studies talk about sexual harassment and misogyny, and this is mentioned in here, but more emphasis is put on women leaving because they feel undervalued or excluded in the jobs, not because there's some horrific, horrible incidents, but just they didn't feel included. And I've heard that myself, and I think that's probably a bigger, a different but a bigger, more widespread issue than the more the more obvious law-breaking kind of incidents. And then the final point on that was this, what they call the unconscious affinity bias, where insurance industry recruiting people with similar characteristics, personalities or connections or backgrounds, so nepotism effectively. And again, we've heard all that too. So this seems to me to be quite thoughtful in its output, even though it's through the lens of this article. And what are the answers? Well, really, they're saying that what a lot of people do quite like, who feel, not too comfortable in the industry, do quite like the flexible working, because that gives them sort of safe places to be and things, which maybe people would dispute and disagree and debate, but that's kind of what it says, which is interesting. And they're also saying that this kind of, maybe businesses need to think a bit about this drinking culture and how that is managed. And I would agree with that. I mean, I think it is too often the kind of default in these things. I don't think there's anything wrong with having alcohol, but then sometimes, it's, to me, still in the industry a little bit, you raise an eyebrow at certain places, at conferences and things, where there's drink being served quite early in the morning, for example, which doesn't have to happen.
Yeah.
I mostly don't need a drink at 10 o'clock in the morning when I'm at an insurance conference.
You do at mine.
Yeah, true. But that does happen, it sort of happens. And I think it's, I think it's not about being, kind of abstemious or anything like that, or Puritan or anything. I think it's just making some quite sensible points about some things that should be looked at. They do say as well that this is probably also very true of the financial services industry generally, that it's kind of run on the same lines. And perhaps, and then they're also saying that with the spotlight on ESG and things, the industry also has to really get its act together, because it's going to be in trouble if it doesn't sort of start to sort these things out. And my final point about this is this sort of stuff is still coming out, and it's a shame because LMG is doing a lot of good work and others are doing a lot of good work within the industry. But every time one of these comes out, you have to sort of think, well, how does that play with young people? How does that play out with women who might have thought I'd go into that industry? It doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't. And yeah, I think you've made all the points there, Ben. Nothing really more to add. But do you think? I do get the sense that things have changed quite a bit. Do you think they've changed since the pandemic?
I think that some things have been, as always, this study makes the point too, that it takes a long time to change these cultures and behaviors, and I would agree with that. I think you tend to knock off the big, most obvious things first, the sexual harassment cases, the really poor, bad behavior, which are to some extent the tip of the iceberg. I think what is much more difficult is the things that are alluded to in this report, nepotism, unconscious bias or affirmation, just women generally feeling not as valued in that industry as I am in another industry. Their choices, they mean that lots of people will be making choices on what might seem to traditionalists maybe, well, they're not being harmed and it's not bad, it's fine, But actually, I think you need to be better than that. I think you need to be on the side of where there is a positive choice being made about insurance. It's a great place to work. So this has to be addressed. Otherwise, people in ethnic minorities and women will continue to say, I think I'll either leave or I'll just not bother in the first place.
Yeah. And so that plays into our talk last week about talent and next generation. And it'll be interesting to hear what the claims community have got to say about that. Next week, we've got a session looking at kind of leadership and next gen talent. So,
and they are right. I mean, the study's right too about how soon it is that ESG evaluation will come in. Organizations that we've spoken to are saying we're not doing it yet, but we will be measuring selection processes based on ESG, in particular diversity, because that is a relatively straightforward one for us to look at. And we'll be dropping suppliers that don't have the kind of diversity we expect.
Yeah.
So that I think will make a big difference over quite a shortish period of time. But we're not there yet.
Good. Right. Thank you, Ben. Right. I'll wrap things up. So big news. Obviously, we ran the Strawberry Tea Party last Sunday, and you'll be delighted to know that it stopped raining at 2:00. It absolutely chucked it down all morning. So we had a really good event, and the world famous egg throwing and catching competition was absolutely hilarious. I'm trying to get some footage of kids with eggs half cracked in their hands trying to catch them from 20 meters away. But you'll be pleased to know, and everyone will be pleased to know, I've had more correspondence about the egg catching on privately on LinkedIn than I think anything else. So next year we'll do it as a live event on LinkedIn.
We should do it at the London Claims Conference.
Yeah, egg catching. That would be hilarious. I love that.
It's a thought.
Yeah. From the top of the building out. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be all right. That you and I could do it.
Yeah, definitely. Good. Right. What are you doing this weekend, Ben? Anything good?
Well, it's my birthday.
Oh.
So some of my family is coming over to see me. And
some aren't.
Some aren't for various historical reasons. But no, so so that's kind of what I'm doing. And also I'm another big news. I'm doing 2 sessions of rock climbing.
Wow. Paddleboarding, rock
belaying.
climbing.
Yeah, I know. So I'm like action man.
Yeah.
Belaying. A bit of belaying for
Belaying.
yeah. Roping, belaying, yeah.
Right. Cool. Well, hopefully you'll be here next week, and you haven't.
I might have some footage of it as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put some. I mean, not that it's going to be that exciting, watching me holding a rope or someone else holding a rope while I climb up a rock face.
Yeah. That's quite exciting. I got my son a driving lesson in blue water, but he's only 12, so they do these. Yeah, so nice. It's like a driving experience for kids in blue water car park. So yeah, I'll let you know how that goes.
I mean, as long as you're not in the car, I'll be good.
Yeah, I'll film it. As the instructor's going, ah! Yeah.
I did not teach I did one try at my kids driving, and my daughter just drove straight out into a main road. I said, that's it. Leave it to the experts.
Yeah. Oh, scary stuff.
Yeah, it's fine now.
Right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We shall be back next week. Have a good weekend.
Enjoy. Have a great weekend. Bye.